Hi, my name is Dr. Erwin Kwan. I am on a mission to dissect what makes high performers, innovators, and great leaders successful. For this podcast, I aim to share insights from interesting and exciting conversations with people who have figured it out to inspire you and empower you with actionable tips you can put into practice to hopefully improve your life. In today's episode, I've got Dr. Christie Lewis, who is a GP passionate about food, exercise, health, and well-being. For people who are getting to know you, would you be willing to tell us about what you do, Christie?
Yes, of course. Hi, Owen. Thank you for having me on. So, yes, I am currently a GP working in London, and I would say I'm more of the more holistic GP. I practice what I would call lifestyle medicine, and so what does that mean? I'm encouraging patients to look at their lifestyle and make some changes to try and prevent getting a disease. So I'm looking at their stress levels, looking at their sleep patterns, looking at what they're eating and how much exercise they're doing.
I know you have a background of physiotherapy and you've also trained as an acupuncturist. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
I first got into doing a physiotherapy degree because, well, I think it all started when I was about 3 years old and I started dancing. And I carried on dancing until I was into my early 20s. And I think I had that passion for exercise, how the body moved. And I was quite a caring child, I think. And so I thought a caring profession was really what I wanted to do. And actually, funnily enough, I did some work experience with a friend's father who was in cancer care. And I remember seeing half a day with him as a doctor. And it terrified me actually because he was giving cancer diagnoses to patients and they hardly had any time with each other. And then I spent the afternoon with a physiotherapist. And they spent so much time with the patient, were really caring, much more hands on. And I just saw that as the career I wanted to do. So I ended up training to be a physiotherapist, and I absolutely loved my time there. And I took an interest in repairing the body more naturally at that point, I think. And so I really got into my nutrition, rehabilitation, and then actually acupuncture. I decided to train as an acupuncturist because I found that the combination of rehabilitation through physio, nutrition, and acupuncture really complemented people's healing processes much more. So I carried on training as an acupuncturist and a physiotherapist for a couple of years. But then I think I was becoming really, really interested in health and disease. And so after that couple of years, I just decided to study medicine. I went to Liverpool and did my medical degree. And yeah, I trained as a doctor. I became a doctor.
That's interesting. I love this background that you've got as a physiotherapist and acupuncturist, but this makes you more holistic as a doctor.
Absolutely, it really does, and I think it's lovely to be able to use my past experience in my day-to-day job as a GP now. It's just so lovely that I've not wasted my time as a physiotherapist. I've actually enhanced some new skills, and I'm trying to use those skills as a GP.
When you decided to do medicine, it's quite a heavy undertaking after completing course in physiotherapy. How did you approach this?
It was actually a really hard time. And, starting with new friends, starting a new city, it was really, really hard. And I have to admit, the hours were very, very tricky, particularly as a junior doctor. But I just threw myself into it, and I think as a medical student, you do just have to throw yourself into it. You're it's a real camaraderie. You're all in it together, and I guess actually thinking about it, I really got into my sort of healthy lifestyle, exercise and eating well as a junior doctor because as a junior doctor, you really are under a huge amount of stress. You're sleep deprived, you're working long hours, and you get ill all the time. And I think at that point, it really made me realize how important it is to prioritize your sleep, manage your stress, exercise, and eat well to survive. So actually, it was an interesting transition. I think I transitioned quite quickly because I was seeing patients as a physiotherapist. And then as a doctor, I was sort of seeing patients and being in that hospital environment. So actually the transition wasn't too bad. I think it was just the long hours and the amount of stuff you needed to know, which was probably the hardest transition.
I want to talk about the lifestyle part that actually made you realize when you were working as a doctor, because many of the lifestyle medicine practitioners, it's from their own personal struggle that attracted them to this field. Did you have an example when it made you realize really you needed to focus on putting the oxygen mask on yourself first, and then you'll be able to help others?
Absolutely. I think as I said before, as a junior doctor, I was working all hours under the sun to you had to work such long hours, and you were naturally sleep deprived. And at that point, when you're sleep deprived, you sort of grab for the terrible food, or you may not prioritize exercise. And I remember there was probably about 6 months where I used to get so many coughs and colds, and I thought at one point I got terrible tonsillitis. I was really poorly, and I thought, I can't do this. How am I going to survive as a doctor, doing these long hours, but also being exposed to so many coughs and colds and viruses? How am I going to survive as a doctor? And I think, I've always been a healthy eater throughout my childhood, but I think, when you are under such pressure, these things do drop away. And I think it was at that point when I realized, I remember having a terrible tonsillitis and I was so poorly, had to take a couple of days off work, which I'd never done before. And then I think it was my mum, bless her. My mum is really into healthy eating, and she said, "You just need to eat more fruit and vegetables and sleep more." And I think it was at that point when I had that conversation with my mum that I really, really needed to just turn myself around and be that healthy person that I used to be. So I remember making lots of healthy smoothies with loads of fruit and vegetables in it. I remember making sure I was getting to bed early. I was starting to get back into my exercise, and I was started to actually do yoga. So I was doing some lovely meditation, mindfulness, and just lovely stretching. And I remember turning myself around, and suddenly I was getting more energy, I was more focused, and I wasn't getting ill anymore. So I think it was at that point which I really realized how important all of these things are in benefiting your health.
Thanks for sharing that. It's so easy when you're working as a junior doctor just to slip into these bad habits after a long shift when you're tired, just to get some junk food. You don't sleep very well, and then the next day you have to do the same thing.
Exactly. Junk food's too readily available, especially in hospital. I mean, I don't know if you have much experience with the hospitals, but all you can get around the corner is a vending machine full of rubbish. There's plenty of crisps and chocolate and terrible, snacks that you can get. And in the canteens, they're not much better. So, it that doesn't help either. You really have to know how to meal prep as much as possible to be able to stay healthy on those long shifts.
Absolutely. I think it's a good segue to talk about your love affair for healthy food. I've read on your blog about your inclination for eating healthy from childhood. Could you talk to us how you were influenced to this at such a young age?
I probably owe that to my mum. I was born in South Africa, and so as a young child, I was introduced to some amazing exotic fruits and vegetables. And I remember, you know, I mean, I came over to the UK when I was a couple of years old, but I think from my mum and dad's experience, they were always introducing me to lots of amazing fruits and veg. And I remember coming home from school and having, sliced apple or butternut squash or avocado. And I think that was just such a normal thing to snack on. And I think that probably was a huge part of, well, a huge influence in my life was my parents feeding me healthy food. And I think as a dancer as well, you realize that when you're dancing you need to be strong and you need to have plenty of energy, and so eating healthy food made you feel more energetic and strong. So I think all of that came together. And it was strange, I've always been healthy from then on, really. I remember being my parents and my sister laughing at me when we were in Florida. And I don't know if you've been to America, but they have pizzas and burgers and chips, and that's usually what most children eat. But I was the one who wanted to go to the salad bar and eat the salads, and my parents always just laughed at me because I was always that slightly annoying child who always wanted the healthy food. And this was when I was sort of 9, 10 years of age. And then, when I went to, as a student, when I went to university, again, all my student friends used to ridicule me because I was eating stuffed aubergines and making salads instead of all that typical fast food that most students eat. So I think I've always just been drawn to healthy food. It just makes me feel better, and it just tastes great. So I think it's always been a part of my life.
It's incredible. Most children, I would imagine, would go for the more appealing food like the pizza or fried chicken, things like that.
I know. I think I was a bit of a strange child, to be honest.
But it's interesting that you carried on with practicing this healthy habit of eating and making sure that what you feed your body is good for your health.
I think once you make that change, or you make a concerted effort to eat really well, I think naturally you just feel so much better in yourself. You naturally have more energy, your skin might be better, you might be sleeping more, you might look better. So, it does have a hugely positive impact on you if you make some simple changes, particularly from being unhealthy to more healthy. I think that's probably when you notice the change a bit more. But yeah, it's amazing when you eat healthily. You feel so good.
Most people who take this decision to eat healthy, they rarely turn back after that. And even if they try what they used to enjoy in the past, they find that it's not as tasty as the food they currently eat.
I would agree. I think you also, when you eat healthily, you tend to get more of a variety of fruits and vegetables, and your plate just looks so much more appealing when it's full of color and amazing flavors and herbs and spices. I think, you just get more diversity, and obviously you're getting all of the amazing antioxidants from all of that color and diversity, but also it just looks and tastes so much better as well than that sort of terrible beige food from junk food.
Would you mind sharing to the audience how you organize your week to cook and eat healthy?
I still work quite long hours as a GP, and so definitely meal preparation is key. I actually cheat a little bit, and I don't think this is a bad thing, but I get one of those recipe boxes. There's lots of different recipe boxes out there, and I happen to use Mindful Chef, but there are so many other ones out there. You can use any of them. But I find 3 days a week when I work late, I find having these recipe boxes in my house really keeps me eating particularly well. So I get vegetarian. I'm not a vegetarian, but I choose the vegetarian options because I know that I'm getting tons and tons of vegetables into my diet if I use these recipe boxes. So they're simple, they've got the recipe, they've got all the fresh ingredients, and so you get home and you don't have to think about what you want to cook. You just take out the recipe and cook it yourself. So it might take half an hour, but you don't have to, there's no food waste, you don't have to think about what you want to cook, and it just keeps me eating really good healthy food during the week. I think also I do like a big shop on a weekend, so that my week is prepared. So I've got loads of fruit, loads of vegetables, and nuts and seeds and things in my house, so that I'm not getting back late and not knowing what to eat. I'll always have food in the house ready. I think one of my other bit of hacks is making a smoothie in the morning, because actually I'm not somebody who enjoys eating anything too much in the morning. So what I do is I've got a food blender which I just put loads of fruit and vegetables in the morning and whiz it up and take it to work with me. So when I start to get hungry it happens to be around 11 o'clock these days, but I will have my smoothie, and I know that I've in that first meal of my day, I'm having loads of fruit and vegetables. So really, just to summarize, really, I think for my breakfast, I just have an amazing smoothie that I make. But also I do have homemade muesli in the house, which I have if I do fancy muesli and milk. So I will have that in my house. I make sure that I get a good food shop in over the weekend, so I'm ready for the week ahead. And I cheat, I guess, with recipe boxes, but I make sure I choose the healthy options, and I use those, during the week when I'm a bit busier. But don't get me wrong, I still have my treats and things, but that just helps me get through my week, making sure I'm eating healthily.
I think this is a common practice that I found people who are very healthy eater do. They batch and prepare the week. What do you do for lunch?
So that's a really good point, actually. I tend to have leftovers from my evening meal, and so I generally just put that into a Tupperware container and take it into work with me and reheat it. Or I might, during the summer, I used to make lots of salads, and I would, while I'm cooking my main meal, I would just throw some salad ingredients into a Tupperware container. And I always have lots of snacks, because I do get hungry actually throughout the day, whether that's boredom or not, I'm not sure, but I just tend to need little snacks all the time. So I always take a little container of mixed nuts. I'll take fruit, and just make sure that I've got food available for me if I am hungry throughout the day. So yeah, I think leftovers is a really good way of using up food, so there's no food waste, and making sure that you're eating healthy, and also time saving. It means you're not wasting loads of time. I think also it is really tempting to go out during the day to go and buy some lunch, and now and again, I don't get me wrong, I do that, but 90% of the time I will try and food prep as much as possible, just to make my life easier.
Thanks for sharing this. I really love this idea of using smoothie because it's a great start for people who are not into fruits and vegetables to get started.
It really is. I'm a real lover of my smoothies. Actually, I think what I tend to do is you need to make sure, or you don't have to, but this is how I work. I try and make sure that I've got half fruit and half vegetables, so that I'm not having this huge sort of concentration of sugar. So I tend to put in lots of spinach, big handful of spinach, maybe a carrot, some beetroot, some ginger, and then I use frozen berries, because frozen berries are a bit cheaper, and you can store them in your freezer, and just put a handful of frozen berries in, and plus maybe an apple or a banana, and then some water, and there you go. You've got at least 5 different fruits and vegetables in one go, and it keeps you quite full as well. So I think it's an excellent way of getting in lots of fruit and veg. And I think for children as well, if you're a parent out there, I think it's a really nice way of introducing children to more vegetables, because you don't taste the vegetables, you just taste the lovely berries. So it's I think it's an excellent way of hiding that vegetable in your morning smoothie.
Yeah, it's a really good hack that you're sharing with us today. The other thing I wanted to say is I'm glad you mentioned about the price. People think that plant-based diet, fruits and vegetables, is expensive.
Yeah, and yeah, I have to admit it is really hard, but I I really don't think you don't have to go organic. Obviously, if price was no object, obviously organic, there is research to show organic fruit and veg is potentially better for your health. However, if this is a point that's discouraging people from buying fruit and vegetables, I would wholeheartedly say, do not worry. All fruit and veg is good for you. So you don't have to get the perfect looking carrot or the perfect looking apple. Get the funny odd shaped things, and the the own brand things, they're just as good. And actually buying in bulk as well, so buying a huge package of carrots or potatoes is often good. And I think going to local grocery stores, like local markets, you can also get amazing fruit and veg from there. And I think if you actually counted out the pennies from from buying your fruit and veg in the supermarket or the grocers, compared to the fast food and the all these ready meals out there, I think actually the cost, if it's marginal, it would marginally be higher, but maybe not even that. I don't think you should be discouraged from eating fruit and veg because of price, because you can get cheap fruit and veg.
Definitely. If you want to make it work, you make it work. Your diet is not only plant-based. You also have chicken and you also have fish. How would you describe your diet to people?
Yeah, so I mean, I don't really want to use this fad buzzword, the flexitarian, but I would have to admit that I probably am more of a flexitarian. So what that means is I would say 80% of my diet is more plant-based, and this has been a change I've made in the last couple of years, really. I've been eating a lot more fruit and vegetables. However, there are a huge number of health benefits from eating oily fish in particular, and with the omega 3s, sort of for brain health, and so I try and have oily fish such as salmon or mackerel or sardines 2 or 3 times a week. It's probably more like 2 times a week, and then I have to admit I see meat and actually dairy as more of a treat. And I think this is something that a lot of people are moving towards. So sort of the 80% plant-based and then the 20% meat, or fish. I think we know, eating too much meat and dairy in your diet increases the amount of inflammation in your body, and we know that inflammation can lead to disease. So trying to reduce the body's inflammation from cutting down on processed foods, and red meat, and dairy products or animal products in general, is only going to benefit you. So my rule is, when I have meat, I make sure it's good quality, and I see it more as a treat. So when I go out for dinner, I might have a steak or a meat dish. So that's really how I work.
That's incredible. There are loads of fad diets out there: keto diet, there's low carb, paleo diet, there's so many. But I think the main thing is to focus on the diet that works for you.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, I really am not a fan of the term diet at all. I think it's just a way of eating, and I don't advocate omitting any food groups at all, unless obviously you have an intolerance or an allergy to something. But I would say just getting balance is key. Have, your treats now and again, and eat meat now and again, but I think just eating a variety of foods and food groups is key, because I don't like the idea of cutting anything out. I think if you want to be healthy and have a variety of vitamins and minerals and antioxidants in your diet, I think as long as you get a good variety of whole foods, then you can't really go wrong. I do worry a little bit about all of these different diets that people go on, and I just think, if, for example, if you're trying to lose weight, then it's all about trying to maybe cut down on the amount of food you're eating, and just make sure that you're just eating more fruit and vegetables, and maybe exercising more. I mean, there's lots of different reasons why people go into different, eat different diets, but my personal view is just to eat a healthy, balanced diet and try not to really cut out many food groups.
I'm sure as a GP, you get a lot of patients who ask you about diet and what they should be doing, what kind of food they should be doing. Recently, I had somebody who asked me about my opinion on keto diet. And I think there's a lot of information out there. The problem is people are confused. What do you do when people ask you these kind of questions?
Yeah, it's really tough actually, and I don't I'm really honestly can understand why the public are confused, because to be completely honest, I'm confused sometimes when people say, what should I be doing, what should I be eating, because it's not really black and white at all. I think what I try and encourage people to do is, firstly, as I keep saying, eat more fruit and vegetables, get lots of variety and color into your diet, and try not to eat too much processed foods. So if you don't know an ingredient, if you look at a packet or a tin or a ready meal, and you see ingredients that you don't understand, I would say just have a think about whether you should be eating that or not, because I think if we keep it quite simple and just eat lots of fruit and vegetables, a bit of meat, a bit of fish, some nuts and seeds, some beans, then you can't really go too wrong. I mean, although I have to admit, if I do have somebody who's just eats ready meals, for example, this is an older guy who maybe is on their own, and they eat is ready meals, I'm not going to suddenly say, stop eating your ready meals and go and buy all your fruit and vegetables and expensive fish and meat. I wouldn't actually say that. I would look at what they're eating and say, well, maybe let's make some wiser food choices. So have a look at the traffic light system on that ready meal, and avoid the ready meals that are more red, so higher saturated fat or higher sugar or higher salt content, and maybe go for the more healthy options, which are more vegetable based or have less fat or less sugar in it. Because I completely understand, in an ideal world, I'd get people to be eating lots more home cooked fruit and home cooked vegetables and home cooked meals, and eating more fruit. But I understand that that's not always possible. So I do try and adapt my advice to people so that I'm not asking them to make huge changes, but it's just making those wiser food choices.
I think that's great advice. The key step is to make small changes rather than aiming for big changes, because people make small changes and they're more likely to carry on with it.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think, sometimes I get quite passionate about what I talk about, and I do get quite worried that sometimes I overwhelm patients. So I say, or people, sorry, I always say patients because as a doctor, generally I'm talking to patients. But I do feel that sometimes it is overwhelming for people to make such a jump to suddenly eating very healthily. So yes, making small changes is key. So what I try and say is, if you're having 5 pieces of fruit or vegetables a day, maybe just add in 2 more different varieties of vegetables that meal or that day. And see if you can eventually, by the end of the month, for example, start introducing 10 different fruits and vegetables in a day, and then suddenly just adding 1 extra or 2 extra different vegetables into a meal or into a day. Suddenly they've increased their diversity of fruit and vegetables. And sometimes I find that quite easy, or people find it easier to do. It is difficult. Things have to be bite sized. I understand it. It is hard sometimes, and it's just working with the individual to see what works for their daily life.
I want now to talk about your creativity. The one thing that struck me is how active you are. Even during your working time, you manage to fit in these workouts. Let's talk about what's your approach to staying active.
For me, yeah, I have a tiny flat in London, and I work long hours, and so I don't have a gym membership. I All I do is I have a mat permanently out on my floor in my living room, and so, for example, if I don't go into work in the morning, because I have quite a flexible week, if I don't go into work in the morning, I'll get up and put my exercise gear on, and maybe do a little workout at home, on my mat, using no equipment. Some days I might use some hand weights that I have in the house, or some resistant bands. So I sort of make up my own little workouts, only 15, 20 minutes long. Or if I fancy and the sun's out or it's a nice day, I might go and do like a little workout in the park down the road from me, or just go for a nice brisk walk. I also love doing yoga, so I go to yoga once a week. I go to a class, and I'm lucky enough to have a boot camp that runs for free. It's a Sweaty Betty boot camp for free on a Saturday morning, which I go to as well. So I try and mix it up a bit. And I don't exercise every day, but if I do exercise, for example, I might do 3 workouts a week in my house, and for the rest, and then I do a yoga workout, and I do this boot camp every week. So I am exercising a lot. But if I know that I'm not going to be able to exercise, or I can't really be bothered to exercise, I will make sure I go out for a walk, because just getting outdoors and keeping active just makes me feel better in myself. So I love keeping active.
Walking is such an important thing that people don't appreciate, because walking does two things. It helps you mentally and helps you physically. Brisk walking has been shown by research to be beneficial for your health long term.
There's been quite a lot of research into just doing 10 minutes of brisk walking a day, or actually, ideally 3 times a day, is just as beneficial as doing a whole 30-minute workout in a gym. As long as you're getting a little bit hot and sweaty, your heart rate's going up a little bit, then you're being active, you're exercising, and it's so beneficial for so many reasons to your health, but also, as you said, the mental health. And I don't know whether, I know for me, if I've had a stressful day, just getting outside and getting the fresh air and that activity just immediately makes me feel so much better. So yes, it's just, walking is amazing, but walking that little bit faster sometimes is even better.
You mentioned about going to yoga classes. I think social accountability is also a good way to make sure somebody keeps practicing with somebody who doesn't enjoy doing exercise.
Yeah, yeah. I really agree with that. And I have to admit, that was something I was missing maybe about 6 months ago. I was just doing workouts at home, and I realized that actually sometimes I would have weeks where I just could not be bothered, and I couldn't motivate myself. And yes, having that class to go to that you've booked onto, or having a friend who goes to it saying, are you coming on Sunday to yoga, is amazing. And I think if you have the opportunity to work out with somebody, it's just great. It's a social experience, it's a social activity, it's lovely. Social interaction is incredible for your mental health, and obviously you are more likely to do that exercise that you've committed to if you have a class you've booked onto, or your friends going along with you. Yeah, it's definitely getting that variety is key.
I go running weekly and I go with a friend. So there's also that question in your mind if you're going with somebody that you don't want to let that person down if you don't go that week.
Definitely, definitely. And I think I have to admit I'm not really into running myself, but I've heard of all these amazing park runs that happen in London, for example, and I'm sure they happen in other places as well, where you meet as a group on a Saturday morning and you go running around a park, and then maybe people would have a coffee afterwards. And I think that's lovely. If you love running, then gosh, I would definitely recommend doing something like that. Actually, also, thinking about it, if people are trying to get into exercise, having a goal is really good. I mean, don't think I would ever run a marathon. I really don't enjoy running, but maybe joining onto like a 5K run, or joining like a running club or something like that is amazing to get people into activity, just having that goal. But yeah, definitely having a friend who's motivating you is always going to help.
Yeah, I really enjoy this aspect of having a goal, because when people are focused on something they want to achieve, they are motivated by just achieving that goal, and they build up every week the stamina to achieve that. I think having a reason why you're doing it is also important.
I would agree with that, actually. I think, funnily enough, one of my friends who's a personal trainer actually said to me, what are your fitness goals for 2019? And I thought, gosh, I've not really thought about it. But I have thought about it recently. And I've got a few little goals that are personal to me with what I want to do. For example, I don't know why, but really want to be able to do a pull up by summer, for example. And so I'm going to now structure my workouts at home, or, wherever I exercise, to try and help me to achieve that pull up. And there are a few yoga poses that I cannot do um, for anything. And I really want to try and get better at these yoga poses. So I'm going to try and structure my workouts and my activity to be able to achieve that, and just practice it. So I think it's quite nice to aim for a goal. And, obviously that goal has to be achievable. I wouldn't say if you've never run before, suddenly book onto a marathon. I think you have to start small. Like we were saying, start small and then, aim for greater things. But I think having that goal really does motivate you. And yeah, it's really good. It keeps you a bit more positive and motivated.
And you also mentioned about treating yourself. I think it's important to introduce this feedback loop when once you achieve that goal, to celebrate and then go into the next goal.
Absolutely, yeah. I think we're only human, aren't we? And I think failure is not something any of us want. So making goals realistic and achievable are key, because then you'll have that sense of achievement, which is always going to impact us positively, isn't it?
So you mentioned you enjoy doing yoga and you also do some Pilates as well.
Yeah, yeah.
What other exercise or practice have you got into recently?
So actually, yoga is something that I have to admit I've got into much more recently. I think I mentioned that I had started it maybe when I was in my first degree, but it I didn't for some reason I didn't really keep it up. I think I was more into sort of the high intensity workouts, but more recently I've realized that downtime is really important. I think as professionals who work long hours, and there's lots of other professions out there who work probably longer hours than us, but I think having that, I think when we're in such a high energy state and a high stressed state, doing high intensity exercise just fuels that. And I think I went through a period of time a couple of months ago where I felt like I was always on the go. I never really stopped. And I realized that actually slowing down is really, really important. So I actually booked a holiday to Bali, and I did a yoga retreat. And I did a whole week of waking up in the morning early to do 2 hours of yoga, and then I did 2 hours of yoga in the evening. And gosh, I felt so much happier and healthier after that week of yoga. And so when I got back, I must have been about 6 weeks ago now, I decided that the way I felt in myself, I felt so much more at peace in myself that I was going to continue doing yoga. So I've been really grateful that I found an amazing yoga studio near me that I go to once a week, and I try and do some yoga at home as well. And I think after those stressful days where your stress levels, your cortisol levels are really high, I've now started to realize that I mustn't do those high intensity exercise workouts on those days, because it's just increasing my stress levels and my cortisol levels and my inflammation in my body. So what I'm doing is I'm recognizing that, and instead I'm using yoga to just try and use that sort of parasympathetic nervous system, trying to tap into that and just slow everything down. And it's really, really improved my focus, concentration, and definitely sleep. Just, you mentioned Pilates actually, because that is something that I've recently got back into. I think when I was a physiotherapist, Pilates was an amazing tool that we used in particularly after having a baby, but also people with back pain. We used a lot of Pilates based exercises to help treat people's backs. And I, being a GP, sat down a lot at my desk. I have been suffering with back pain quite a lot, intermittently through the last few months. And I decided that I was going to get back into Pilates. So once a week, I've been trying to go to Pilates as well, although it's not always possible to fit it all in. But I've found that actually doing those Pilates based exercises have been really beneficial to my back pain. So I try and encourage people who have back pain to get into Pilates, because it's, again, just another amazing exercise or workout or class or whatever you want to describe it as, just to get into everyone's lives. Honestly, I really find that is life changing as well, particularly for those people who suffer with back pain.
I'm glad you mentioned about the setting at work, because as doctors who work on the desk, and some of the practices where you don't have to get up and go and call for your patient, you might just sit there for a few hours. What are the things that you've done to make sure that the posture, your setting, and how you fit at the workplace?
Sorry, yeah, it's hard, isn't it? I think thankfully I do actually go and get my patients from reception. So I think that has helped me, just having those regular breaks from sitting. But I also I do little desk workouts, and so how it works as a GP is you go in the morning and you see so many patients, and then you do lots of paperwork and have a bit of a lunch break, and then you get back into your afternoon surgery. So in that middle part of my day, although I'm extremely busy and I don't really have a lunch break, I just make time. I just prioritize time. Just 5-10 minutes out of my day, I will do some stretches at my desk, and I will do like a little workout in my room. And it's so funny when people walk into my room and see me doing squats and star jumps and press ups against the wall. They think I've gone mad, but it really does reset me for the afternoon, and it gets my blood pumping, it gets my muscles stretched, and it just gets my energy levels up as well. So I try and also go for a walk at lunch if I can. If I get the time, I'll go for a walk outside just to get some fresh air and again reset myself. So yeah, I think what I would advise anybody who sits at a desk, which is probably quite a lot of people, I would just say, ideally, every hour try and get up and move around, even if it's just going to make a cup of tea or going to the toilet. Just get up, and then you don't have to be the only person. You can get all your colleagues to get involved as well, and just do a little workout, maybe some squats, maybe some press ups, maybe some press ups against the table or the wall, some star jumps, some jogging on the spot. It doesn't need to take up a lot of room. And then ideally, going for a little walk for your lunch break is great. So anything you can do just to get yourself moving again halfway through the day is key.
I love that. What separates a good workout from a great workout, Christy?
Oh gosh, that's a that's really that's like a very individual and personalized, I guess, because there's always going to be a day where you just don't want to exercise, but you should. So you might do your workout and you just didn't really have that energy, you didn't really love it, you didn't really feel like you had the energy to do that extra repetition, or you didn't really get deep into that squat or whatever. And you might feel, well, I've done it, but it wasn't great. I have that a lot. And I think, but there's days where I have so much energy and I could carry on forever and I feel really energized and happy. And I think it's really individualized. I think I guess it just completely depends on your mood, how much energy you're feeling. Have you eaten that day? Have you had a bad day? I think it doesn't really matter as long as you do it and just try and enjoy it as much as possible. I think for me, you just need to have fun with your exercise, and you need to not beat yourself up if you do have a bit of a well, you don't feel you've done a particularly good workout, or you've stopped halfway through because you can't be bothered going on. Just be grateful that you've done some exercise, you've moved, you've got into your workout gear, you've done something, and don't beat yourself up, and maybe have a rest day the next day and get back on it, the day after.
It happens to all of us. We have some days where we don't feel like working out and we just do it. And sometimes it actually spike up our mood.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. I think I think it's really important not to beat yourself up about it. And I think what I've realized now is, if I've forced myself, or I say forced, but if I've said to myself, look, I'm definitely going to do an exercise routine today, and I've really not been up for it, I then have to think to myself, well, why am I not up for it? Is it because maybe I'm coming down with something? Or is it because I've not had enough sleep? Or maybe I've not fueled my body with enough food that day? So actually, that's probably a day where you should say, well, maybe I'll just rest today. And maybe I just won't do any exercise, because actually, you can over exercise and actually you can overdo it. So I think it's really important to just recognize how your body is feeling and listen to it. And there are going to be days where you feel much more up for it, and your workout will probably be much better for it. It'll be more energized. And so I think it's just being aware of what your body wants that day. I think that's really important.
Accepting that is a key step. The thing is to be consistent over a long period of time, because common things happen is that you see a lot of people going to the gym in January after their New Year's resolution, and then they're working out hard, and in a few weeks down the line, most of these people are already gone.
Yeah, you see that a lot, don't you? And funnily enough, I was just trialing out a gym today. I went to a gym. I don't have a gym membership, but I just thought maybe I should just think about joining a gym so I can use some machines and things, just to get some variety into my workouts. And it made me chuckle, actually, thinking to myself, I probably will only go to this gym a couple of times a week, and if that, I'll probably only go for January and February. So actually, yeah, it's so true. I think people do that, and I love the fact that everyone has so much energy and motivation at the beginning of the year. But I think you do have to just be careful, because suddenly you'll be aiming for going to the gym every night after work, and then suddenly you think, no, this is not for me, and then you just don't do anything. And I think it is really it's quite dangerous to do that. I think finding exercise that you can fit into your routine, fit into your working week, and that you can enjoy, and getting variety is the key. So for me, I advocate not just having to go to the gym to do a workout. As we've said before, walking, doing exercise at your desk, doing exercise at your home, anything that you can do that is just easy for you and that you can enjoy and stick to is key. Because as you said, it's that longevity. We want people to exercise all the time. We want it to not just be a January, February thing, or just before you go on holiday. It does need to be part of your daily life for your health. And so, yes, I mean, I love the fact that people have that passion at the beginning of the year. Just great. It's great. But unfortunately, it's probably not realistic to stick to it. So, yeah, just trying to find something that fits into your daily routine that you're going to enjoy and keep up is key.
Absolutely. A good example of being creative and doing exercise anyway is the kitchen workout I've seen you doing.
Yeah, I do some funny little workouts actually. I when the kettle's boiling, I mean, gosh, if someone could see me in my flat, so people would wonder what on earth I'm doing. But when I'm cooking or I've got the kettle boiling, I will do some little press ups against the work surface. I'll do some squats at the work surface. I'll do some jogging on the spot. Yeah, and the same as if I'm watching television. I have to admit, I don't actually watch a huge amount of television. I do, I keep quite active in the evenings and things. But if I am enjoying some television, if an advert break comes on, I will try and get up and move. It's like my little cue to say, you've been sat down for long enough, get up and move around. So I have on my Instagram account, I have actually filmed a couple of sofa workouts and desk workouts and kitchen workouts just to try and inspire people to say, actually, you don't need a gym membership. You can just incorporate these funny little workouts just in your own home without really needing much time and using up much time. And you can fit that into your life because most people cook, most people boil a kettle, for a cup of tea. So while that kettle's boiling or while your food is cooking, you can just start doing a bit of movement and strengthening up those muscles by doing some simple exercises. So yeah, so I'm a huge a believer of trying to incorporate exercise in your home.
It's great that you use this as a trigger whenever you're doing something, and if you have a trigger, you do it, and you condition yourself in a way of when you find that there's an ad, you just get up and do some activities.
Yeah, and I think I try and yeah, you're so right. I really try and tell my patients this actually because I know most people watch television in the evening. For example, if you watch a soap, I mean, is that an hour long? With I don't know if they have advert breaks on, but for example, I'm sure there's loads of different TV programs that people watch with advert breaks, and so I always say, just challenge yourself this week to get up every time an advert break comes on and encourage the family to do it with you as well and either do some exercise or jog on the spot or just walk around. And I think people find that a lot more digestible to think, okay, when an advert break comes on, that's 4 minutes of doing some activity. And I think that's quite an achievable way of doing exercise, and without you realizing that is actually doing exercise.
And it's great that they do these baby steps, and then they enjoy doing it, and then it just reinforces to keep active.
Yeah, and hopefully it's quite a fun thing to do. As soon as an advert break comes on, you can imagine if you've got a family there saying, "Come on, everyone, get up, let's start moving," and then sitting back down and then getting back up. And yeah, I completely agree. I think once people realise that actually they feel so much better from getting up and moving and using those muscles, then hopefully that will then um, mean that they'll take that extra little step to do a bit more activity and maybe do a little more of an exercise routine, for example. And I think starting small is amazing, and as soon as you feel the benefits, then you will only improve and do more.
Let's go through the rapid fire question. So I ask you some question and tell me first thing that pops in your mind.
Okay.
What is your definition of success?
Wow. For me, I would say being happy. Success is not necessarily about money. It's not necessarily about getting to a certain point in my life. I think for me, success is just being happy, content.
There's a misconception that people have is success equals to happiness, but success does not equal happiness, but happiness can actually lead your way to success.
Yeah, that's a lovely way of putting it, actually. Because funnily enough, you say, how would you define success? Well, I mean, that could mean in your job, in your life. I mean, yes, it's such an interesting. It's a very interesting question actually, and I think for me, I have no idea where I'm going with my career. I really don't know where my career is taking me or my life is taking me really, and so I think if you always try and aim to be happy and content, then surely that's going to make you successful in whatever you do.
Would you mind sharing with us what seemed to be a crisis or failure at a time in your life, which later turned out to be a blessing in disguise?
I guess it's quite a personal thing, but I've recently just been through quite a horrible breakup, a relationship breakup, and I realized what's really interesting is my goal in life a few months ago, actually, or maybe a year ago, was to have a family, get married, and have a house and have a career. And actually, when that broke down about 6, 7 months ago, it made me actually realize that all of those things didn't really matter. It was just about me being really happy and content in myself, really. And I think that's really why I ended up booking a yoga retreat in Bali, and because I really wanted to just take some time out and just work out what actually was really important to me. And we did an amazing vision sort of workshop, and we had to sort of visualize where we were in 10 years, and all I could think about was just being happy. I didn't really care about whether I was in that relationship. I didn't really care about whether I had children. I didn't really care about if I was in the perfect job. I just wanted to be content and happy. And that sort of goes back to the question before. I think having that breakup and realizing that suddenly in the next year or two I wasn't going to be married and I wasn't going to have children meant that actually, what did I actually want? So yeah, it was, I guess I can't say that was a failure, but it was certainly something that really has changed my life. And I think I got into yoga and meditation and mindfulness and thinking about yourself and looking after yourself and really just prioritizing your health and your well-being over your job and sort of more material things. So I think that's been quite life-changing for me, actually.
Thanks for sharing this, Christy. Who is the most inspiring person you have met?
Gosh, there are so many people who inspire me every day, but can I say my mum? My mum inspires me every day. I mean, she's just amazing. I think my mum is just incredible. I mean, she's nearly 70 and she goes to the gym 3 times a week. She plays golf, she does Pilates. She has the most incredible friends. She's happy all the time. Gosh, I would say she inspires me every day. Like, she's always so positive and happy, and always is so selfless as well. And I think if I could be anything like her, I would be happy.
What book have you read that has completely changed your mindset about life?
It's called Why We Sleep by Matthew Walker. It's an amazing book, actually, and it's one that I've actually dipped in and out of fairly recently. I read it and then sort of have used it to look back at, and it's really, really interesting. I think we as a nation, I can only say we as a nation, maybe it's just London, it feels like, but we are chronically sleep deprived. And I think it's something that, as professionals, people think that getting up early and working late is a sign of success. And actually, who needs sleep? Sleep's rubbish, sleep's for failures. But no, if you read this book, it makes you realize that sleep is so important for every element of our working lives. You know, sleep is key to our health. Being chronically sleep deprived can really lead to several diseases and health conditions. And so, I mean, I've always loved my sleep and always try and prioritize my sleep. But what I've realized is actually getting that quality sleep and trying to get 7 to 8 hours a night is so important for our health. And it's made me realize that actually I don't want to have that late night or, that early morning. I want to make sure I get to bed early and I wake up at a good time and get that good quality sleep, because it is so important for our health.
I highly recommend this book to anybody listening. It is such a great book. How have you implemented things from this book in your life?
So interestingly, I've always been quite a good sleeper, in terms of, I would call my sleep hygiene particularly good, but I will just go through my little sleep hygiene or my sleep routine, because these are sort of talked about in the book. You know, it's really important that you switch off those devices an hour before bed, because our sleep hormone melatonin increases as the evening progresses, and it's actually the production of melatonin is actually reduced if we're using blue light, which is from TVs, laptops, phones. And so I really do try hard to not use my phone, not watch the TV, or use my laptop an hour before bed. So what I tend to do is, for example, if I'm getting into bed at 10:30, about 9 o'clock, I'll turn everything off. And I have a routine of going to run a bath, maybe put some relaxing music on, but definitely read a book. And I might do a few gentle stretches. I make sure that I have sort of a time that I try and get to bed for. And an hour before that, do my little routine of getting myself ready for bed. And I think that is really key. Also, I think important thing is making sure your bedroom's very dark. I wear an eye mask because my blackout blinds aren't great, and I live on a bit of a busy road, so I wear earplugs as well to make sure I don't have any sound. So that those are two quite important tips. Also, I think just making sure your room temperature is a good temperature, not too hot, not too cold. That makes such a difference on your sleep, actually. And in the book, actually, it talks about caffeine, and that's a really interesting one. I don't actually drink a lot of caffeine. I love my tea, but I don't really drink coffee. But I have to admit, the days where I have had a coffee, maybe after midday, I don't sleep as well. And there's a really interesting section in that book about caffeine and how he hates caffeine and how caffeine is something that you really should try and cut down on if you're not sleeping particularly well, because it really has a negative impact on that sleep wake cycle that helps you sleep in the evening.
Thanks for sharing this, Vic. For any doctors working night shift, I highly recommend that they have a look at this book. There'll be definitely something you'll be able to take away from this book.
Oh, 100%. So, I mean, night shifts, having done them so many times, in my junior doctor years, and I'm sure with you as well, but it's really damaging to our sleep. And the only way you can get through it is just by getting an eye mask, getting some good blackout blinds, getting some good earplugs, and getting into a routine. So as soon as you get back from your work, your night shift, wind down, try and switch off that brain without needing the TV or your phone. Try and read a book, get yourself into, a relaxed state, maybe have a warm bath, and then make sure your room is really dark. Try and cut out every stimulus from outside as much as possible, and then try and wake up at a good time, get outdoors, get some really good light, as soon as you wake up, to try and wake yourself up, and then, do a bit of maybe gentle exercise. And I think that's probably the best routine you can have if you're doing night shifts.
Definitely. Thanks for sharing this, Christy. You seem to be very big on routine. Could you walk us through your morning routine?
To be honest, my working week is quite varied. So my morning routine is generally different day to day. But if I'm working in the morning, I get up and I make sure I get as much light into my flat as possible. I open all the windows or open all the blinds and just get some fresh air and some light into my flat. And then I'll make my smoothie in the morning, or if I haven't already prepared that in the day before. And do a bit of a stretch, actually. I really enjoy stretching in the morning. Actually, it really wakes me up and sort of focuses me for the day ahead. So I might do 2 or 3 minutes of just a few stretches in my bedroom before I get dressed, and then I get my my snacks ready for the day at work, and my smoothie, and head off to work. On mornings that I don't work, there's one morning which I don't work, which is a Monday, and I tend to try and get up at the same time most days, because I think that helps me sleep better. And I think generally that is a good rule to try and follow, is try to go to bed the same time each evening and wake up at a similar time most mornings, if possible, because it does help your sleep-wake cycle and it helps you sleep generally. And so on my mornings off, I do tend to try and get up at a similar time, and I generally try and do exercise on my mornings off, because otherwise I tend not to do exercise that day, because I fill my day up with all sorts of stuff. So if I get my exercise out of the way on those mornings, then it just means I've got the rest of the day to do other things.
Thanks for sharing this. I think, yeah, first thing in the morning is one of the best ways to actually start a new habit. That's your trigger. If you do something first thing in the morning, at least you've lifted the heavy rock.
I think it sets your day up as well really nicely, because I'm really for sort of setting your intention every day. And I think if you wake up with a positive attitude, your body feeling nourished and alive and energized, I think your day naturally is going to be better. I think if you wake up and see the bad weather and you're negative and your body feels a bit stiff, but you don't do anything about it, I think generally your day's just not going to go as well. I don't know if it's just me, but I just know that if I wake up, have lots of light, feel positive, maybe, say a few things to myself like, it's going to be a good day, or think about some really positive thoughts, or think about the exciting things that might happen that day, and then do some stretches. I think generally my day goes better, and or maybe even if things don't go so well, I'm more able to cope with it because I'm feeling a bit more positive and energized. So I would recommend people do that, actually, is try and wake up, and although even if it's a dark, dreary day and it's raining outside, just try and think of a few positive things that maybe you were grateful for the day before, or things that you're looking forward to in the day, because I think having that positive mindset is really powerful.
I completely agree with you, Christy. Positivity, at least you've accomplished something, and if you're grateful, it's only going to set the tone for the rest of the day.
Actually, that's something that I've been doing a bit more of. I don't know whether it's yoga that's got me into this, or just having a bit more time to reflect in my life. I found that I actually do quite a lot of mindfulness or meditation in the evening before I go to bed, and I use an app on my phone to help me through that. And it's there's been a couple of exercises where they say, try and think of the three positive things that have happened to you today, and just with thinking through those things, or being more aware of the positive things that you're grateful for, has really made me search for those positive things and be more grateful in my day-to-day life. And so it's a really powerful tool to do, actually. I can't quite believe how much it's actually changed my mindset.
I'm glad you mentioned this because directing your attention on something positive and amplifying it, it actually works because when you think about anxiety, people actually focus all their attention on something that they're worried about and they amplify it, and it just makes things worse because they keep thinking about it. Whereas if you flip things and you think about something positive, you get the benefit from it.
Yeah, and it's psychology. There's research into that as well, and I know it's often sometimes very hard for people who are in that negative space to actually get out of it. But just something as simple as an exercise, like thinking up things that you're grateful for that day, like three things or one thing even, I think is a really good way to start changing that mindset very, very carefully and slowly. And yeah, it's actually quite difficult to begin with. You start thinking, gosh, what have I been grateful for today? But actually, as you start doing it really becomes very easy, and you've got sort of 10 things that you're so happy for, and it's lovely. So I would recommend it if people are finding that their thoughts are a lot more negative, and they're struggling with positive thoughts. I think just maybe writing down one thing that you're positive for that day, even if it's just someone who's opened the door for you, or kept the door open for you, or has picked something up that you've dropped, or just the fact that it's a nice day today. It's not as rainy today. It's been sunnier, or it's not as cold as you were hoping for. It didn't rain when you thought it was. Think simple things. It doesn't have to be anything big. It's just simple things, and it's just amazing how much it actually changes your mindset, as we said.
Definitely. And writing it down actually helps in you visualizing what's happened.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think I'm actually not somebody who writes diaries or journals, or writes things down like that. But actually, we did a lot of those activities on this yoga retreat that I did, and I've really realized that writing things down is actually very, very helpful, as you say. It makes you accountable for that sort of that activity that you've just done, and looking back on it is actually lovely to be able to remind yourself of what you have been grateful for, maybe on those days where you're not feeling so positive. And so actually writing it down, I think, is again another powerful tool.
Thanks for sharing all these hacks. We'll start wrapping up. Could you tell us one last advice to doctors who are very busy professionals? They may feel overwhelmed and stressed.
Yeah, of course. Unfortunately, stress is something that probably each and every one of us suffers from, and even if it's their job, or just family life, I think there's a lot of stress and strain on all of us. So I think for me, my huge advice would be just to stop and just take a step back and just have a think about what's actually going on in your life. When you get that sudden overwhelming stress, you just can't think straight. And I think it's just taking a pause and just stopping is really, really important. And just thinking, what am I actually getting stressed about? Can I do something about this? And I often use a breathing technique when I get stressed. Obviously, you have to be aware that you're getting stressed. That's the first thing. But if you can be aware of the signs of you getting stressed, and then sort of take a step back and say, okay, what is it that I'm getting stressed about? And just take a moment to breathe. And I use a breathing technique where you breathe in for 4 counts and you just hold your breath for 2 to 4 counts, and then you breathe out for 6 to 8 counts. So it's breathing in for 4, holding for 2 to 4, and then breathing out for 6 to 8. And I find just having that moment to pause and breathe just helps to bring it helps to get your parasympathetic nervous system working, reduces those stress levels, those cortisol levels, and just helps you focus and see the wood for the trees essentially. And I find that's a really, really useful tool. And I think it just helps to give you a bit of clarity, and then you're a little bit more able to cope with what's going on at that time. I remember being a junior doctor, and you have this bleep that the wards try and contact you for, and sometimes it's just non-stop. It just doesn't stop going off, and you can't do anything. You're just in panic mode, and when you're in panic mode, you're not efficient. You can't think clearly. So I remember just stopping and breathing and just taking a second out just to have a moment. And I remember just having a bit more clarity and thinking, okay, I can do this. And I think, so for me, when I'm getting stressed, I use that breathing technique a lot, and I think it really does just help bring a bit of clarity to that moment.
Thanks for sharing this. It is powerful. Breathing technique is so powerful. Even Navy SEAL uses. I know doctors, many of us will type hey behavior, and we might think, oh, breathing technique is just like a fluffy thing, but there's research that backs how breathing technique, if you do it slow, deep breathing, it slows down your system and calm nerves.
It does, and you use that a lot in yoga as well. The ujjayi breath is where you're sort of breathing against a closed epiglottis, and it's sort of it's quite a powerful breathing technique actually, and it's amazing how it slows your breathing down and it calms your nervous system down. And actually, people who are highly stressed, I mean, rather, we won't get into the whole sort of science behind it necessarily, but when you do have your sympathetic nervous system working overdrive all the time, we know that it does actually lead to chronic health problems. And so it really is important to try and utilize our parasympathetic nervous system a lot more by calming things down and bringing down those stress levels. And so, yes, just simply breathing and slowing things down is so powerful for our health, but also our mind.
Yeah, and the best thing about the breathing technique is that you can carry it everywhere.
Absolutely. So, for example, for anyone who suffers with panic attacks, anxiety, particularly on public transport in on a busy tube, for example, yeah, you can have that breathing technique in your back pocket and just bring it out whenever you need to. So, if you're feeling a bit overwhelmed, or you're feeling anxious, or you're feeling like a panic attack is coming on, just trying to focus on your breathing is really amazing, and it just brings that heart rate down, it slows your breathing down, and it just gives you that moment of mindfulness to be aware of where you are and what you're doing, and just focuses things and calms things down. So yes, absolutely, it's not something that you need a fancy app to do. It's something you can just do every day if you need to.
Thanks for sharing so many valuable insights today, Christy. I know you're very active on Instagram and you also have a blog. What's the best place for people to connect with you?
Thank you, Owen. It's been an absolute pleasure being on here. Yeah, so I think mainly I'm on Instagram, and you can find me at Dr. Christie. And I also have a link to my website from there, which is something I definitely need to be trying to update more and more. I find my time management has not been great for that. So I am going to be improving it soon, but you can find me there on www.drchristie.com.
Thank you for listening till the end. I hope you can implement some of the insights we discussed. If you have not already subscribed, I suggest you hit the subscribe button and hit the notification bell so you don't miss our next video.